The conference room fell silent when Lucas Thorne collapsed mid-presentation, his hand clutching his chest as $200 million in investment deals scattered across the mahogany table. 3 weeks later, Lucas sat in his corner office on the 42nd floor, staring at the doctor's report that had fundamentally altered his perspective. At 34 years old, he ran the largest commercial real estate development company in the Northeast, oversaw 2,000 employees, and apparently had the cardiovascular health of a man 20 years his senior. The heart attack, technically a minor one, served as what his physician called a warning shot. Change everything or face the consequences. His assistant Margaret knocked twice before entering. She had worked for him for 8 years and knew when to push past his usual barriers. "The trainer is here for your consultation." "I don't need a babysitter to tell me to use a treadmill," Lucas said, not looking up from the contracts he was reviewing. "Mr. Thorne, you hired her yourself last week." "Well, technically, I hired her on your behalf after you agreed to your doctor's terms." Margaret's tone left no room for argument. "She's waiting in the small conference room." Lucas closed the folder with more force than necessary and stood, adjusting his suit jacket. The past 3 weeks had been humiliating enough without adding a personal trainer to the mix. His partners had insisted he take a step back, reduce his hours, and focus on his health. The business magazines were already speculating about his condition and whether Thorne Development was stable. He had built this company from nothing after his father's smaller firm went bankrupt, and he refused to let a weak heart destroy what he had created. The woman standing by the window turned when he entered, and Lucas found himself pausing mid-step. She was not what he expected. Tall, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, she wore athletic clothes that showed she practiced what she preached, but her expression held none of the false cheerfulness he associated with fitness people. Her eyes, a striking green, assessed him with the same directness he used when evaluating a property investment. "Mr. Thorne, I'm Kira Lancaster." She crossed the room and extended her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. "I assume you know why you're here," Lucas said, sitting down at the table. "My team thinks I need a fitness intervention. I read your medical files. Your doctor sent them over with your permission." Kira sat across from him, pulling out a tablet. "You had a cardiac event 3 weeks ago. High blood pressure, elevated cholesterol, and you're carrying an extra 40 pounds, most of it around your midsection. You work 16-hour days. Eat maybe one real meal consisting primarily of whatever can be delivered to your desk. Sleep 5 hours a night if you're lucky, and your idea of exercise is walking from your car to your office." Lucas felt his jaw tighten. "I'm a busy man. I built this company from the ground up. That requires sacrifice. It required your health, and you've run out of what you had to give." Kira's tone remained even, factual. "I'm not here to judge your choices. I'm here because you've decided you want to change before you end up dead at 40. So let's be clear about what this is. I'm not a cheerleader. I'm not going to hold your hand and tell you it's okay to skip workouts or cheat on your nutrition plan. If you hire me, you're hiring someone who will push you harder than anyone in your life has pushed you, and you're going to hate me for it sometimes." Something in her bluntness struck him. Everyone in his life handled him carefully now, tiptoeing around the heart attack like it was a shameful secret. Kira spoke to him like he was capable of change, not broken beyond repair. "What makes you think you can succeed where others would fail?" he asked. "Because I don't care about your money or your company or your reputation. I care about results. I've worked with executives before. The successful ones are the ones who realize that their body is the only machine they can't replace when it breaks down." She leaned forward slightly. "You're used to being in control, Mr. Thorne. You're used to working harder than everyone around you and seeing results. That's exactly what this will take, except the results won't be profit margins. They'll be your life." Lucas studied her for a long moment. "What's your approach?" "We start tomorrow at 5 in the morning at the private gym in your building. You mentioned in your preliminary questionnaire that you own the building, so access won't be an issue. We'll train 6 days a week, 1 hour of strength training and conditioning. I'll design your nutrition plan and you'll follow it exactly. No business lunches with steak and martinis, no working through meals. We'll also work on stress management and sleep optimization." 5 in the morning, Lucas almost laughed. "I'm usually already working by then." "Not anymore. Your health is your new first priority or this doesn't work." Kira's expression didn't shift. "I need complete commitment or I'm wasting both our time." The challenge in her voice ignited something competitive in him. Lucas Thorne had never backed down from a challenge in his life. "Fine. 5 in the morning, but I need to be at my desk by 7. "You'll be showered and ready by 6:30, Kira said, standing. "Wear athletic clothes you can actually move in. And Mr. Thorne, don't eat breakfast tomorrow. I want to assess your baseline fitness first thing." She left without waiting for his response, and Lucas found himself staring at the closed door. Margaret appeared a moment later with a knowing expression. "She's intense," his assistant observed. "She's exactly what I need," Lucas heard himself say, though he wasn't entirely sure he believed it yet. The alarm went off at 4:30 the next morning, and Lucas seriously reconsidered every decision that had led to this moment. His penthouse apartment, usually a sanctuary of peace above the city chaos, felt oppressive in the pre-dawn darkness. He dragged himself out of bed, found the athletic clothes his housekeeper had purchased at his request, and stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. The extra weight was obvious now that he was looking for it. When had he stopped paying attention to himself? Kira was already in the gym when he arrived at 4:55, setting up equipment. She glanced at him once and nodded. "Good. You're on time. Let's start with a basic assessment." The next hour was among the most humbling of Lucas's life. Exercises he assumed would be simple left him breathless and shaking. Kira watched everything with clinical attention, adjusting weights, correcting his form, and pushing him to complete each set even when his muscles screamed for relief. She didn't offer false encouragement or tell him he was doing great. She simply expected him to finish what he started. By 6:15, Lucas was drenched in sweat and seriously questioning his life choices. Kira handed him a water bottle and a protein shake in a sealed container. "Drink this. Then go shower. Tomorrow we'll start the real work. Today was just baseline." "That wasn't the real work," Lucas managed between heavy breaths. "That was an assessment. Now I know what we're dealing with." She began breaking down the equipment. "You're weaker than I expected, especially in your core and lower body. Your cardiovascular endurance is poor, and your flexibility is basically non-existent. But you didn't quit, and you pushed through when it got uncomfortable. That's what matters." Lucas wanted to argue to defend himself, but he had nothing. She was absolutely right. "How long until I see results?" "Depends on your definition of results. You'll feel different within 2 weeks. You'll see physical changes in 6 to 8 weeks if you stick to the program. Full transformation takes 6 months minimum." Kira looked at him directly. "But here's the truth, Mr. Thorne. This isn't a 6-month fix. This is the rest of your life. If you go back to your old habits after we're done, you'll end up exactly where you started." The next morning came too soon, and the morning after that even sooner. Kira was relentless in her expectations. She pushed him through workouts that left him trembling, corrected his form a dozen times per session, and refused to accept anything less than complete effort. She also completely overhauled his diet. The first time Margaret tried to bring him his usual lunch order, Kira intercepted it and replaced it with grilled chicken, vegetables, and brown rice from the meal prep service she had arranged. "This is ridiculous," Lucas said, staring at the plain food. "I have a working lunch with the development team in 20 minutes. Then you'll eat this during your working lunch," Kira replied. She had started staying after their morning sessions to ensure he actually followed through on the nutrition plan. "Your team can eat whatever they want. You're eating this. You do realize I'm your employer, not the other way around. You're my client, and I'm the expert you hired to save your life. Eat your lunch, Mr. Thorne." Something about the way she refused to be intimidated by his position or his money fascinated him. Everyone else in his life wanted something from him, had an angle, treated him like Lucas Thorne, the CEO, rather than just a man. Kira treated him like a project, a challenge to be conquered through discipline and hard work. It was refreshing and infuriating in equal measure. 3 weeks into the program, Lucas stood on the scale in the gym locker room and stared at the number. He had lost 8 pounds. 8 pounds that had come off through early mornings, sore muscles, and more vegetables than he knew existed. He felt different, lighter, stronger. His suits were starting to fit better. But more than the physical changes, something had shifted in his mindset. He looked forward to the morning sessions now, to the challenge of beating his previous performance. "Better," Kira said when he mentioned the weight loss. "But we're not celebrating yet. You've got a long way to go." "Would it kill you to say good job?" Lucas asked, adjusting the weight on the barbell for his next set of squats. "I'll say good job when you hit your goals, not for doing what you're supposed to do." But there was something in her expression, a slight softening. "You're ahead of schedule, though. Most of my executive clients cheat on their meal plans by week 2. You haven't missed a single one." "I don't do anything halfway," Lucas said, positioning himself under the bar. "I've noticed." Kira stepped closer to spot him. "That's why this is going to work." As Lucas lowered into the squat, he became acutely aware of how close she was standing, her hands ready to catch the bar if he faltered. He had been so focused on the workouts, on proving he could do this, that he hadn't really looked at her. Now, pushing back up from the squat, he caught her reflection in the mirror. She was beautiful, not in the polished way of the women he usually encountered at charity galas and business dinners, but in a natural, powerful way. There was strength in every line of her body, confidence in the way she moved. He completed the set and racked the bar, turning to face her. "How did you get into this?" Kira blinked, apparently surprised by the personal question. "I was a competitive athlete, track and field in college. When that ended, I got certified as a trainer because I wanted to help people find what sports gave me, which was control over my own body and life, power that came from my own effort, not from anyone else." She handed him his water bottle. "Not everyone gets that. Most people outsource their power to other things, other people. Your power came from building your business, but you forgot that your body is the foundation for everything else." Lucas took a drink, considering her words. "You talk like someone who learned that lesson the hard way." Everyone learns important lessons the hard way. Kira moved to adjust the weight bench for the next exercise. That's what makes them stick. Over the following weeks, their conversations during sessions grew longer, more personal. Lucas found himself sharing details about the pressure of running Thorne Development, about the expectations that came with rebuilding his father's legacy after the bankruptcy. Kira listened without judgment, offering observations that cut through his justifications and excuses. "You're using work as a shield," she said one morning as they finished a particularly brutal circuit training session. You tell yourself that everything you sacrifice is for the company, for the employees who depend on you. But really, you're hiding from the fact that you don't know who you are without the job. Lucas felt defensive anger rise. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to, not because it benefited the business? He opened his mouth to respond and found he had no answer. Every decision, every action for the past decade had been filtered through the lens of Thorne development. His relationships, his friendships, even his apartment location had been chosen for strategic value. That's what I thought, Kira said, but her tone was gentle rather than harsh. You're not unique in that, Mr. Thorne. A lot of successful people lose themselves in their work. The difference is whether you decide to find yourself again. Lucas, he said suddenly. What? Call me Lucas. You've been pushing me around a gym for 6 weeks and redesigning my entire life. Mr. Thorne seems excessive. Something flickered across her face, too quick for him to identify. Lucas, then. The way his name sounded in her voice did something strange to his chest, tightened it in a way that had nothing to do with cardiac health. He had been so focused on his physical transformation that he hadn't noticed when his awareness of Kira shifted from professional respect to something more. Now, watching her move around the gym with easy confidence, he couldn't ignore it anymore. 2 months into training, Thorne Development held its quarterly board meeting. Lucas walked into the conference room at 7:30 in the morning, feeling better than he had in years. His suit, newly tailored to fit his changing body, felt sharp and professional. His mind was clear from the early morning workout and healthy breakfast. The dark circles that had been permanent fixtures under his eyes for years had faded. His partner David Morrison did a double take when Lucas sat down. You look like a different person. I feel like one, Lucas admitted, opening his portfolio. The transformation was becoming obvious to everyone around him. He had lost 22 pounds, and the muscle definition was starting to show through. But more than the physical changes, his entire demeanor had shifted. He was more focused during meetings, less reactive to stress, quicker to find solutions rather than just working longer hours. The presentation went smoothly, and afterward, David pulled him aside. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. The board is noticing. There were concerns after the heart attack about your ability to continue leading the company. Those concerns are gone now. Lucas felt a surge of satisfaction, but it was tempered by something else. 3 months ago, the board's approval would have been his sole focus, the metric by which he measured his worth. Now, he found himself thinking about what Kira had said about finding himself outside of work. The board's opinion mattered, but it wasn't everything. That evening, instead of staying at the office until 9 or 10 as he would have done previously, Lucas left at 6. He stopped by the gym, knowing Kira often worked with evening clients. He found her in the training area, working with a middle-aged woman through a series of resistance band exercises. Kira's eyes widened slightly when she saw him. She said something to her client, then crossed over to where he stood by the door. "Everything okay?" she asked. "You don't have a session scheduled. I know. I just wanted to tell you that the board meeting went well. They commented on how much better I look, how much more focused I am." Lucas paused, suddenly feeling uncertain. "I wanted to say thank you for pushing me when I needed it." Kira's expression softened into something that might have been a smile. "You did the work, Lucas. I just provided the framework. Still, I was wondering if you'd have dinner with me to celebrate the progress." The words came out before he fully thought them through, and he saw surprise flash across her face. "I don't socialize with clients," she said after a moment. "It's a professional boundary I maintain." "Right. Of course. Lucas felt foolish for asking. I apologize if I made you uncomfortable. You didn't. Kira glanced back at her client, who was watching them with obvious curiosity. It's just important to keep these relationships professional. Lucas nodded and left, but the rejection stung more than he wanted to admit. He had misread the situation, mistaken her dedication to his health for personal interest. The realization bothered him throughout the evening and into the next morning's session. Kira didn't mention the dinner invitation, and Lucas tried to match her professional demeanor. But something had shifted. He was hyper-aware of every time she adjusted his form, her hands on his shoulders or arms to correct his position. The casual conversation that had developed between them felt strained now, weighted with things unspoken. After 2 weeks of awkward sessions, Kira finally broke the tension. They had finished the workout and were stretching when she spoke. I turned down dinner because getting involved with a client has always been a line I don't cross. It gets complicated, and when relationships end, someone loses their trainer or their progress gets derailed. She kept her eyes on her stretching position. But I've been thinking about what you said about doing things just because you want to, not for strategic reasons. And I realized I'm doing the same thing, hiding behind professional boundaries because it's safer than risking something real. Lucas straightened from his stretch, his full attention on her. What are you saying? I'm saying that when your 6-month training program is complete, if you still want to have that dinner, I'd like to say yes. Kira finally met his eyes, but not before then. I need to finish what I started with you professionally, and you need to reach your health goals without the complication of a relationship affecting our work. Relief and frustration warred in Lucas's chest. 3 more months of maintaining professional distance felt impossible now that she had admitted she felt something too. But he also recognized the wisdom in her approach. 3 months. 3 months, she confirmed. Can you wait that long? I've waited 34 years to feel this way about someone. 3 more months won't kill me. Lucas surprised himself with the honesty. But I need to know I'm not imagining this, that it's not just client transference or something. Kira stood, closing the distance between them slightly. They were standing in an empty gym at 6 in the morning, both in workout clothes and sweaty from exercise, and Lucas had never been more certain of anything in his life. You're not imagining it, she said quietly. I've been trying to ignore it since week 3 when you showed up 20 minutes early because you were actually excited about training. No one has ever been excited about burpees, Lucas, he laughed, the tension breaking. I'm still not excited about burpees. Liar. This time she definitely did smile. 3 months. And in the meantime, we focus on getting you to your health goals. The next 3 months were simultaneously the longest and shortest of Lucas's life. Knowing that Kira returned his interest added a new intensity to their training sessions. She pushed him harder than ever, and he rose to meet every challenge she set. He wanted to prove that he could complete this transformation, that he could commit to something difficult and see it through. The changes in his body were remarkable. He had lost 38 pounds, and his physique had transformed from soft and sedentary to lean and athletic. His blood pressure was normal, his cholesterol levels had dropped into healthy ranges, and his doctor had cleared him for full physical activity with no restrictions. But beyond the physical metrics, Lucas had changed in ways he hadn't anticipated. He had learned to prioritize his health without guilt, to set boundaries around his work time, to find satisfaction in personal growth rather than just professional achievement. Thorne development continued to thrive under his healthier leadership. He had promoted several junior executives to take on responsibilities he had previously hoarded, and the company was stronger for it. The business magazines that had speculated about his health crisis now ran features about his remarkable transformation and how his new approach to work-life balance was becoming a model for other CEOs. Throughout it all, Kira remained his constant. She celebrated his victories, pushed him through plateaus, and refused to let him slide back into old patterns. Their conversations during training sessions ranged across every topic imaginable. He learned that she had grown up in a small town in Vermont, that she had put herself through college on athletic scholarships, that she had a younger brother she helped support through medical school. She learned about his complicated relationship with his father's legacy, his fear that he would never be enough no matter what he achieved, his slowly developing understanding that success without health was just slow suicide. Finally, on a Tuesday morning in early spring, they finished their last official training session. Lucas completed the final set of exercises, ones that would have been impossible 6 months ago, and Kira marked something on her tablet. "That's it," she said. "Program complete. You've exceeded every goal we set. Your health markers are all excellent. You've lost 42 pounds, and more importantly, you've built habits that will sustain you for life." Lucas looked around the gym that had become so familiar over the past 6 months. "So, what happens now?" "Now you maintain. You keep training regularly, keep following the nutrition principles we established, and keep prioritizing your health." Kira set down her tablet. "You don't need me anymore, Lucas." "That's not true." He stepped closer to her. "I'll always need you. Maybe not as a trainer, but definitely as someone in my life. That is, if the offer for dinner is still open." "The offer is very much still open." Kira closed the remaining distance between them. "I've been thinking about this moment for 3 months. Only 3 months. I've been thinking about it for 5. Lucas reached out, finally allowing himself to touch her in a way that wasn't about training or form correction. His hand cupped her cheek, and she leaned into the touch. "I've never felt this way about anyone." "That's because you never slowed down long enough to actually see people before." Her hand came up to cover his. "You were too busy conquering the business world to realize you were lonely." "I'm not lonely anymore." He leaned down, giving her time to pull back if she wanted, but Kira rose to meet him halfway. Their first kiss tasted like possibility, like the future he hadn't known he wanted until she pushed him to become someone capable of having it. When they broke apart, both slightly breathless, Kira laughed. "So about that dinner? Tonight? Somewhere nice where we can actually talk without gym equipment around. I'll need time to look like something other than a sweaty trainer." Lucas ran his thumb along her jawline. "You look perfect to me exactly as you are, but take all the time you need. I've got a company to run, and apparently I'm very good at balancing work and personal life now. Some wise woman taught me that." That evening, Lucas found himself more nervous than he had been for any business negotiation in his life. He had made reservations at a quiet Italian restaurant in the North End, the kind of place where the focus was on conversation rather than seeing and being seen. When Kira arrived, he barely recognized her out of athletic clothes. She wore a simple black dress and had left her hair down, and Lucas felt his heart do something complicated in his chest. "You're staring," she said, amusement coloring her voice as she sat down across from him. "I've never seen you outside of the gym. I'm allowed to stare." They ordered wine and fell into conversation as easily as they always had, but now without the professional boundaries that had constrained them. Lucas learned more about her family, about her dreams of eventually opening her own training facility focused on helping people recover from health crises. Kira asked him about his hobbies outside of work, and he had to admit he was still developing those. "I've been thinking about taking up running," he said. Actual outdoor running, not just on the treadmill, maybe working toward a half marathon or something. Kira's eyes lit up. I could train you for that, I mean if you want, or we could just run together sometimes. As a couple thing, not a trainer-client thing. I like the sound of couple thing, Lucas said, reaching across the table to take her hand. I like the sound of that a lot. Over the next several months, Lucas discovered what it meant to build a life rather than just a career. He and Kira fell into a rhythm that balanced both their needs. They ran together in the mornings several times a week, explored the city on weekends, and gradually integrated their separate lives into something shared. Kira met his business partners and understood the demands of his work without being intimidated by them. Lucas visited her family in Vermont and saw where she had come from, the small-town values and work ethic that had shaped her. His friends, the few he had maintained throughout his workaholic years, were shocked by the change in him. At a charity gala 6 months into his relationship with Kira, his old college roommate pulled him aside. "I don't know what happened to you, but you're like a different person. A better person. You're present in a way you never were before." Lucas glanced across the room to where Kira stood talking with Margaret, the two women having developed an unexpected friendship. "I almost died at 34 because I forgot that being alive was about more than just working. Kira reminded me what matters. She's good for you." "She's everything," Lucas said simply. A year after their first training session, Lucas stood in the same gym where Kira had first pushed him through that humbling assessment. He had arranged to have the space to himself for an early morning session, telling Kira he wanted to see if he could beat his personal record on a particular workout circuit. It was technically true, though not the whole truth. Kira arrived at 5 in the morning as always, and Lucas felt the same surge of affection he experienced every time he saw her. She had changed his life in ways he was still discovering, had loved him at his weakest and pushed him to become his strongest. They moved through the warm-up together, the familiar routine comforting in its consistency. Then Lucas stopped and turned to face her. "I need to tell you something." Kira lowered the resistance band she had been stretching with, concern crossing her face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything is incredibly right, which is what I need to talk about." Lucas took a breath, suddenly more nervous than he had been for any moment in his life. "A year ago, I was dying. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly killing myself through neglect and obsession with work. You saved my life, Kira, not just by teaching me how to exercise and eat right, but by showing me what it means to actually live. Lucas, you don't need to thank me again. I know you're grateful. I'm not thanking you, I'm asking you something." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small box he had been carrying for weeks, waiting for the right moment. When he opened it, revealing the ring inside, Kira's hand flew to her mouth. "You pushed me harder than anyone ever has. You saw potential in me when I saw nothing but obligation and responsibility. You made me fall in love with being alive again, and somewhere in that process, I fell completely in love with you. Marry me, Kira. Let me spend the rest of my very healthy life showing you how much you mean to me." Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When she finally found her voice, it was shaky with emotion. "Yes. God, yes, Lucas. I love you so much." He slipped the ring on her finger, then pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against him. They stood in the middle of the gym where their story had begun, surrounded by the equipment that represented discipline and transformation. And Lucas felt more grateful than he had ever been for the heart attack that had forced him to change his life. "I'm going to be the most annoyingly healthy husband ever," he murmured against her hair. "Daily runs, meal prep on Sundays, the whole thing." Kira pulled back to look at him, her smile radiant through her tears. "I would expect nothing less." And I'm going to push you to be the best husband you can be, just like I pushed you to be the healthiest version of yourself. I'm counting on it." They were married 4 months later in a small ceremony in Vermont, surrounded by family and close friends. Lucas's business partners attended, marveling at how the driven, intense CEO they had known had transformed into someone capable of genuine joy and balance. Kira's family welcomed him with open arms, her brother giving a toast about how his sister had always been the strongest person he knew. And now she had found someone strong enough to stand beside her. For their honeymoon, instead of a luxury resort, they chose a hiking trip through New Zealand. Lucas pushed himself through challenging trails, reveling in his body's capability and strength. Kira matched him step for step, and at the summit of one particularly difficult climb, they stood together looking out over the landscape. "I never thought I'd be someone who took time off work to climb mountains," Lucas said, his arm around his wife's waist. "You're not someone who takes time off work to climb mountains. You're someone who lives a full life that includes both challenging work and challenging adventures." Kira leaned into him. "You're balanced now, Lucas. That's what I'm most proud of." 2 years into their marriage, Kira opened her training facility focused on cardiac rehabilitation and executive health. Lucas helped her secure the funding and location, using his business expertise to support her dream the way she had supported his transformation. The facility thrived, with Kira developing a reputation as the trainer who could help even the most resistant clients find their strength. Lucas continued to lead Thorne development, but with a management style that prioritized sustainability over constant growth. He became known in business circles not just for his company's success, but for his advocacy for executive health and work-life balance. He spoke at conferences about his near-death experience and subsequent transformation, always crediting Kira as the person who saved his life. On their 3rd anniversary, Kira told him she was pregnant. Lucas felt fear and joy collide in his chest. "I'm going to be a father." "You're going to be an amazing father, a healthy one who will be around to see our kids grow up and have kids of their own." Kira took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "You did the work, Lucas. You chose life, and now we get to create new life together." Their daughter Maya was born on a sunny morning in September, and Lucas held her in the hospital room with tears streaming down his face. This tiny person existed because he had chosen to change, because Kira had refused to accept his excuses and pushed him to become someone capable of being present for a family. "Thank you," he whispered to Kira, who looked exhausted and beautiful in the hospital bed. "For all of it. For not giving up on me." "I saw your strength before you did," she replied, watching him cradle their daughter. "I just had to push you until you saw it too." 2 years later, they welcomed their son Daniel into the family. Lucas had stepped back from day-to-day operations at Thorne Development, moving into a chairman role that allowed him to focus on strategy while having more time with his family. He coached Maya's youth soccer team, went on family hikes on weekends, and made sure to be home for dinner every night unless absolutely unavoidable. On a Saturday morning 5 years after their wedding, Lucas woke early as always. The habit Kira had instilled in him remained, but now it was about choice rather than obligation. He slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake her, and went for a run through their neighborhood as the sun rose. When he returned, sweaty and energized, he found Kira in the kitchen making breakfast while Maya and Daniel played in the next room. She looked up when he entered, and the smile she gave him still made his heart race. "Good run, great run. I'm thinking about that half marathon in the fall." "Want to do it with me?" "Obviously. Someone needs to make sure you actually train properly and don't overdo it." Lucas crossed to her and pulled her into his arms, not caring that he was sweaty from the run. "I can't believe there was a version of my life where I never met you. Where I just kept working myself to death and never knew what I was missing." Kira wrapped her arms around his neck. "But that's not the version that happened. This is the version that happened. The one where you decided to change and I got to help you and we built this beautiful life together." "You pushed me harder than anyone," Lucas said, echoing the thought that had been true from their very first session. "And I fell for your strength, for the way you refused to let me settle for less than I was capable of becoming. And you showed me that strength isn't just physical. It's also being vulnerable enough to admit you need help, brave enough to change everything, and committed enough to maintain those changes for life." She kissed him softly. "We make each other stronger, Lucas. That's what love is supposed to do." From the other room, Maya called out that she wanted to go to the park. Daniel echoed his sister with the enthusiasm only a 3-year-old could manage. Lucas and Kira broke apart, laughing, and went to wrangle their children for a family outing. Later that afternoon at the park, Lucas pushed Maya on the swings while Kira helped Daniel navigate the climbing structure. The sun warmed his face, his body felt strong and capable, and his family's laughter filled the air. This was the life he had almost lost before he ever found it. This was what living actually meant. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Lucas and Kira sat together on their back porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. She was curled against his side, fitting perfectly under his arm. "I love you," Lucas said, the words as true as they had been the first time he spoke them. "Thank you for not letting me die at 34. "I love you too," Kira replied. "Thank you for being brave enough to change, for trusting me when I pushed you, for becoming the man I always knew you could be." "We should renew our vows," Lucas said suddenly. "Do something to mark how far we've come. How far I've come from that person who collapsed in a board meeting." Kira lifted her head to look at him. "I'd like that. What brought this on?" "I was thinking today about that first morning when you told me you would push me harder than anyone and I would hate you for it sometimes. I never hated you, not once. I was frustrated, challenged, pushed beyond what I thought I could do. But every moment led to this, to us, to this life. I want to celebrate that." They planned the vow renewal for their 6th anniversary, another small ceremony with family and friends. But this time, Lucas wrote his own vows, speaking from the heart about transformation and love and the woman who had saved his life by showing him how to live it. 6 years ago, I thought I knew what success looked like. I thought it was about building companies and making deals and working until there was nothing left to give. Then I met you, and you showed me I was wrong about everything. Success is standing here with you. It's our children laughing in the next room. It's waking up every morning excited about the day ahead instead of just enduring it. You pushed me to become someone worthy of this life, worthy of your love. And I promise to keep working every day to be that person, to never take my health or our family or this incredible gift of being alive for granted. I love you, Kira. Thank you for your strength, your patience, and your refusal to accept anything less than my best." There wasn't a dry eye in the room when he finished, and Kira's own vows about finding her match in someone as committed and strong-willed as herself only added to the emotional atmosphere. Years continued to pass, each one building on the foundation they had created together. Lucas watched his children grow strong and active, inheriting their mother's natural athleticism and their father's determination. Thorne development continued to prosper under new leadership, while Lucas stayed involved as chairman, providing guidance without consuming his entire life. Kira's training facility expanded to multiple locations, helping hundreds of people transform their health and their lives. On the morning of their 10th anniversary, Lucas woke to find Kira already awake, watching him with a soft expression. The early morning light filtered through their bedroom window, and for a moment, he was transported back to all those mornings in the gym, when watching her had been something he tried to hide. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, reaching for her hand. "About how different our lives would be if you hadn't had that heart attack, if you hadn't been forced to make a change." Kira laced her fingers through his. "It's strange to be grateful for something that was so scary and could have ended so differently. I think about that sometimes too. How I almost ran out of time before I learned what time was actually for." Lucas pulled her closer. "But I also think about how I would have found my way to you somehow. Maybe not as a client, but somewhere, somehow. Some people are meant to find each other." "That's very romantic for someone who used to think romance was a waste of productive time." Lucas laughed, the sound full and genuine. "That person feels like someone I read about in a book. I can barely remember what it was like to be him. He's still in there, just balanced now. The drive, the ambition, the intelligence, all of that is still you. You just learn to direct it toward life instead of just work." They spent the day celebrating quietly with their family. And that evening, after the kids were asleep, they sat together in the home Jim Lucas had built in their house. It was a smaller version of the facility where they had met, but it held all the equipment they needed to maintain their health and strength. "Remember when you told me that my body was the only machine I couldn't replace when it broke down?" Lucas asked, watching Kira stretch. "That was the moment I knew you were different from everyone else in my life. You weren't afraid to tell me the truth. You needed someone who wasn't afraid of you or your position or your money. You needed someone who saw past Lucas Thorne, the CEO, to Lucas Thorne, the human being who was slowly killing himself." Kira finished her stretch and moved to sit beside him on the weight bench. "And I needed someone who understood what it meant to commit to something difficult, to push through resistance, to value strength in all its forms. We found what we needed in each other." Lucas took her hand, studying the ring she still wore, the one he had given her in this kind of space 10 years ago. "If I could go back and tell that scared, sick man in the doctor's office what his life would become, he wouldn't believe me. He couldn't imagine being this happy, this healthy, this whole." "But you don't want to go back," Kira said. "You want to keep moving forward, always forward. With you, with our family, with this life we built together." He kissed her hand. "You pushed me harder than anyone, and I fell for your strength. Best decision I ever made was showing up to that first session. Best decision I ever made was pushing you harder than any client I'd ever had. I saw something in you worth fighting for, even when you couldn't see it yourself." They sat together in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from years of deep understanding and shared experience. Outside, the world continued turning, but in this moment, Lucas felt perfectly at peace. He had built an empire in business, but his real success was measured in mornings with his family, in the strength of his body and mind, in the love of the woman who had refused to let him settle for anything less than the life he deserved. The next morning, Lucas woke at 5 as always. Kira stirred beside him, and they rose together to go for their run through the neighborhood. The routine was so ingrained now that it felt as natural as breathing. As they stretched before heading out, their teenage daughter Maya appeared in running clothes. "Can I come with you today?" she asked. "Coach says I need to work on my endurance." Lucas felt his heart swell with pride. His daughter had inherited so much from both of them, including a love of challenge and physical strength. "Of course. Your mom will set the pace so we don't die trying to keep up." The three of them ran together through the quiet streets as the sun rose, and Lucas found himself grateful once again for every moment that had led to this one. for the heart attack that had forced change, for the trainer who had become his wife, for the children who would grow up understanding that health and strength were gifts to be maintained, not squandered. When they returned home, sweaty and energized, they found Daniel awake and making breakfast with the same focus Lucas brought to everything he did. Their son wanted to be a chef, and Lucas supported the dream wholeheartedly, understanding now that success came in many forms. Family breakfast. Daniel asked, and they all agreed enthusiastically. As they sat together eating the meal Daniel had prepared, talking and laughing and planning their day, Lucas caught Kira's eye across the table. She mouthed, "I love you," and he returned the sentiment, the words as powerful now as they had been the first time. This was what he had almost missed. This was what his obsession with work had nearly cost him. But he had been given a second chance, and he had seized it with both hands, transforming not just his body but his entire approach to existence. Years later, when his children were grown and starting their own lives, when Thorne Development had passed to new leadership, and Kira's training facilities had become a regional success, Lucas and Kira found themselves with time that belonged only to them. They traveled, they challenged themselves with new physical goals, they volunteered with health organizations, and they loved each other with the depth that comes from building a life together over decades. On their 20th anniversary, they returned to the gym where they had first met. The building had changed ownership several times, but Lucas had maintained access to the space for sentimental reasons. They stood together in the empty training area at 5 in the morning, just as they had done hundreds of times before. "I should make you do burpees for old time's sake," Kira said, amusement in her voice. "I would do them without complaint," Lucas replied, "though I'd probably be sore tomorrow. We're not 25 anymore. No, we're something better, we're earned." Lucas pulled her into his arms. "Every gray hair, every smile line, every year of this marriage has been earned through commitment and work and love. I wouldn't trade a single moment." Kira reached up to touch his face, her own showing the passage of time but still beautiful, still strong. "You're very sentimental for someone who used to think emotions were inefficient. You taught me that emotions are what make us human. That strength includes vulnerability. That the real measure of a person isn't what they build or achieve, but how they love and who they become." Lucas kissed her softly. "You made me into someone capable of this kind of love. That's the real transformation, not the weight I lost or the muscle I gained." They held each other in the gym where their story began. Two people who had found each other at exactly the right moment and built something that lasted. Outside, the city was waking up, but in this moment, they existed in their own space and time, celebrating not just 20 years of marriage but 20 years of life lived fully and completely. Lucas Thorne had once been a man who measured success in quarterly reports and business acquisitions. Now he measured it in moments like this, in the strength of his wife's embrace, in the health that allowed him to live fully, in the family they had created, and the life they continued to build together. The heart attack that had seemed like an ending had been a beginning. The trainer who had pushed him harder than anyone had become his partner, his love, his reason for becoming someone better than he ever imagined possible. And every morning when he woke up strong and healthy and grateful, Lucas thanked whatever force in the universe had brought Kira Lancaster into his life to show him that real strength was measured not in what you could endure alone, but in what you could build with someone who refused to let you settle for anything less than extraordinary.